In this video, I'm going to show how to set up a high-quality voiceover segment inside of your YouTube video. Here's an example of what our finished voiceover audio edit looks like. Here are our recorded audio clips all laid out in a track panel similar to what we saw inside of Logic Pro when we were working on our music production project. Here are all of our individual audio clips. And over here in the mixer pane, we have all the different audio effects that we're using on our vocal track for this voiceover. We'll go over exactly how to set up this effects chain and the details of how we ended up here as we move through the rest of the video. But before we get there, let's ask the question of why. Why bother going to all this trouble making your YouTube voiceover segment sound any better? Why not just take the audio directly as it comes off of your phone or your camera? Even when you're working inside of a visual artistic medium like a video production, the sound of your video is just as important as the visual component. And that's because our ears are very sensitive pieces of equipment, more sensitive than our eyes in some ways. Think about it. If you're watching a YouTube video and the footage is a little grainy or the visual's a little less than perfect, as long as it's legible at a basic level, you'll probably give it a pass and keep on watching the video, at least for a little bit. Now, imagine you're watching that same grainy video, and this time the sound is clipping, distorted, and blasts out way too loud as soon as you hit that play button. You'll probably rip your headphones out, curse a little bit, and immediately skip that video and move right along to the next one. As humans, our ears are very sensitive, and so any type of clipped, distorting, or otherwise bad sound causes an immediate, visceral, and very strong turnoff to whatever it is that we're watching. Bad sound is one of the quickest ways to lose an audience. And on the other hand, having a lovely, warm, smooth sound to your videos is an amazing way to forge a strong connection with whoever's watching. When you apply the audio techniques I'm demonstrating here, you have the ability to forge those strong connections, even if you're not shooting your video on the most expensive 8K cinema camera. So now let's look deeper at exactly how to get the audio in your YouTube videos sounding amazing. What you're seeing here is the actual production edit from one of the videos back in Module 2 that you've already seen if you've worked your way through the course material. To start, I'll temporarily hide the meters up at the top here so that we can see our mixer a little bit more clearly. Here's the entire effects chain that I'm using on this audio in order. I'll show you a general overview first, and then we'll go through each of the effects and listen to what they're doing from top to bottom in order. We're starting out our effects chain with this vocal channel plugin here. You can add it by clicking this plus sign, going to Channel, Fairlight Effects, and selecting Vocal Channel. This plugin has several different effects built into it. A high pass filter, a equalizer, and a compressor. You could set all of these up as individual effects in a mixing channel, but in this particular program, I like this particular vocal channel plugin because it puts all of these different tools together in one convenient place. Lets me manage things with one plugin instead of three. Next in the chain, we move along to this dialogue processor plugin. Remember, all of these effects are flowing in order from top to bottom down the mixer channel. The dialogue processor is another multi-effects plugin where you have a lot of different tools that you can experiment with. Look at all of these, D-rumble, D-pop, compressor expander, all of this stuff. All of these other tools are turned off, and I'm only using the de-esser portion of this plugin to take out some of the harsher S sounds in the vocal. Next up, after the dialogue processor, we have a second compressor in this dynamics pane here. Yes, I'm using two different compressors on this vocal here for two different purposes. The first compressor that we saw here in the vocal channel plugin, right here, is being used for overall leveling and smoothing out of the vocal. This second compressor is set to control just the peaks of the vocal sound. This helps prevent the vocal from jumping out of the speakers too much and sounding jabby and jarring. And finally, the last effect in this chain is this limiting plugin here. This effect is adding some additional volume, and it's also keeping our levels from clipping at the same time. So here's the complete chain of effects that I'm using on this vocal in order. Inside this vocal channel plugin, we have a high-pass filter. That's to control low-end rumble. We have an equalizer that's used to improve the sound of the vocal. We have our first compressor here, and that's being used as general leveling for the vocal sound. Inside of our dialogue processor, we're using the de-esser as a de-essing tool to take out some of the harsh S sounds in the vocal. We're using a second compressor just to control the peaks of the vocal sound. And finally, we have a limiter being used to add some additional volume and prevent clipping of the signal at the same time. As you can see, we're using the same set of basic audio tools that we learned to use when talking about music production. Equalizers, compressors, de-essers, limiters. We're just applying those tools in slightly different ways inside of a slightly different piece of software. Once you know the correct fundamentals of how to use these different basic audio tools, you can apply them in a wide variety of ways across a wide variety of different creative situations. Now that we've gone over the general overview of how to set up a vocal processing chain, let's go through and listen to each individual effect in the chain and hear the A to B before and after. At the end, I'll show the complete before and after with all of the effects on and then all of the effects off that will illustrate how all of these different tiny choices stack up together. Starting off inside the vocal channel, we have this high-pass filter. A high pass lets all frequencies above the setting of the filter pass through. It lets the highs pass while cutting out the lows. And if I turn that on and off, you can see what that filter is doing. In this case, you won't hear a huge difference when I turn this on and off because we're not working with a bass guitar or a kick drum here. My vocal doesn't go down that low, and the filter isn't working that hard. I've put this high-pass filter on as a safety measure, just to catch any low-end rumble that might be slipping into the microphone here and there. Here's the before and after with the high-pass on and off. Headroom to work with while we're mixing. Then you're going to turn up the volume on your speakers or your headphones to return to a comfortable mixing volume to work on. And then last, you're going to group and color code all of your sounds in a visually logical manner, however your DAW allows you to. Here's your term list for Module 2. Download the term list, and continuing with our vocal channel plugin, which is the first plugin in our chain, we move from the high-pass filter into the equalizing section. Here's it off, here's it on. With this EQ, I've made a few adjustments to gently roll off a little bit more of the low end, and I've also rolled off some harshness in this 2.5, 3K area, and a little of the high-end brightness as well. And I did this to improve the sound of the vocal. My natural speaking voice, as it was recorded, was coming off a bit bright and reedy sounding, so these adjustments help my voice sound a little bit deeper, richer, and warmer, which is always nice to hear in a voiceover. The EQ and the high-pass filter are working together in this case. If I leave the EQ on and turn the high-pass filter off, here's the combination of those two things. Here's the before and after, adding the equalizer in. Digital audio workstation of your choice. You're going to check for macro time alignment, so is everything playing at the right time, and micro time alignment phase on all of your audio assets. If you're working within a more limited tool set, something like Apple's GarageBand, you might not be able to check phase, and that's okay. Just do the best you can with whatever tools you have. Next, you're going to pull down the volume of all of your tracks to give yourself plenty of headroom to work with while we're mixing. Next up, after the equalizer, we have our very first compressor. And with this compressor, my objective was to smooth out the vocal sound in a natural sounding way while also adding a bit of volume with this gain knob. Because I'm going for a natural vocal sound with my speaking voice here, this compressor isn't triggering especially hard, but it is bringing up the softer parts of my speaking voice a bit and making those easier to listen to. I'm going with a more natural, less compressed vocal sound for these kind of course presentation videos because I want my vocals to slot in naturally inside of the videos where I'm showing musical demonstrations. I don't want the sound of my vocal to distract you from the changes that you're hearing me make to the musical examples. If I chose to go with a more obviously affected vocal sound, it would catch your ear a little bit more, and in the case of the course videos, I actually don't want that. When you're going through the course material, I want you to be able to place your focus on the changes that I'm making to the musical examples first without any distractions, so that you can hear what I'm doing clearly to the music in an educational context. In this particular case, my spoken vocal isn't the most important thing that you're hearing. The changes that I'm making to the audio in the studio examples are. But if you're going for more of that influencer-styled vocal sound, which is more of an obviously compressed and affected vocal, I would experiment with your compressor settings going in this direction. I would turn up the ratio, I would turn down the threshold, and turn up the gain. Obviously, listening to all of those changes as you're making them and tweaking accordingly. For the full picture on how different compressor settings work and how to set up a compressor in different ways, reference the course module on compression. So now, taking it back to my preferred vocal settings for this sample video project, here's the before and after, adding this compressor into the effects chain. Then you're going to turn up the volume on your speakers or your headphones to return to a comfortable mixing volume to work on. And then last, you're going to group and color code all of your sounds in a visually logical manner, however your DAW allows you to. Here's your term list for Module 2. Download the term list PDF below this video and be sure you can define the following terms: DAW, phase, stemming, and 0 point. Great job completing this module. Now that our audio project is nice and organized, we can really enjoy the more creative parts of the mixing process that are coming up next. Next up in our vocal effects chain, we move on to this dialogue processor. This particular dialogue processor plugin is meant to be kind of an all-in-one effect, where it's theoretically everything you might need for working with dialogue in one handy tool. However, after experimenting with this, I've found that most of the sections in this plugin don't really work that well. They tend to make the vocal sound odd and a bit over-processed. So in this particular video editing program, I only use this particular plugin for its de-esser right here, as that does work quite well as a de-esser. And just like when we were working within our Logic music production project, a de-esser is used to control just the harsh S sounds of the vocal. Here's the before and after adding in the de-esser. A workstation of your choice. You're going to check for macro time alignment, so is everything playing at the right time, and micro time alignment, phase, on all of your audio assets. If you're working within a more limited tool set, something like Apple's GarageBand, you might not be able to check phase, and that's okay. Just do the best you can with whatever tools you have. Next, you're going to pull down the volume of all of your tracks to give yourself plenty of headroom to work with while we're mixing. Then you're going to turn up the volume on your speakers or your headphones to return to a comfortable mixing volume to work on. And then last, you're going to group and color code all of your sounds in a visually logical manner, however your DAW allows you to. So you can hear with the de-esser off, those S's jump out a little bit more and you get a little bit more bright harshness popping out of the vocal. With the de-esser on, it smooths the sound of the vocal and makes it a little bit easier to listen to. After our de-esser, we add in our second compressor. This compressor is set to only manage any peaking parts of the vocal sound that are jumping out. I've got the threshold point set here so that the compressor is only triggering in the spots where the vocal is jumping out a bit, like when I get a little bit excited when I'm speaking, and it's bringing down just those peaky sounds. As the audio plays, watch how the level moves up and down this line. The compressor will only trigger when the level moves over this point. This will help smooth out the sound of the vocal even more. It makes it sound even less jabby and even more natural, and it also helps me make the overall mix a bit louder. I can push the level on everything higher without having to worry about clipping my whole mix because of a vocal track that's jumping out. Here's the before and after bringing this compressor in and out. Comfortable mixing volume to work on. And then last, you're going to group and color code all of your sounds in a visually logical manner, however your DAW allows you to. Here's your term list for Module 2. Download the term list PDF below this video and be sure you can define the following terms: DAW, phase, stemming, and 0 point. Great job completing this module. Now that our audio project is nice and organized, we can really enjoy the more creative parts of the mixing process that are coming up next. And in our next module, we'll start getting creative by getting into equalization. See you then. So as you can hear, the vocal sounds a bit more even and smooth, easier to listen to. After our second compressor, we move to the final effect in our effects chain. We have our limiter plugin. This limiter is being used as our final volume knob to bring our whole mix up to the final level, and it's also controlling any potential clipping of our audio at the same time. The limiter will prevent the audio signal from moving over this line here and will keep us from clipping our mix. We've established the quality of our vocal sound with our EQ, de-essing, and compression choices on the vocal track, and now I'm using this limiter as the last piece in the chain to raise our entire mix up to our final volume level. Here's the before and after on our limiter. This effect is adding 7.5 decibels of gain to the audio, so fair warning, you're about to hear a large volume jump when I turn this effect on and off. You might want to turn your speakers or headphones down a bit during this part. You're going to import our sample project audio files that I've provided for you into a digital audio workstation of your choice. You're going to check for macro time alignment, so is everything playing at the right time, and micro time alignment, phase, on all of your audio assets. If you're working within a more limited tool set, something like Apple's GarageBand, you might not be able to check phase, and that's okay. Just do the best you can with whatever tools you have. Next, you're going to pull down the volume of all of your tracks to give yourself plenty of headroom to work with while we're mixing. Then you're going to turn up the volume. Now, here's the complete A to B before and after with all of these different effects on versus all of them off. So you can hear the difference between the completely unmixed raw audio versus our finished mixed audio. Fair warning again, we're adding a lot of volume here, so you're about to hear a large volume change between these two versions, and you might want to turn your listening device down just a little bit. Digital audio workstation of your choice. You're going to check for macro time alignment, so is everything playing at the right time, and micro time alignment, phase, on all of your audio assets. If you're working within a more limited tool set, something like Apple's GarageBand, you might not be able to check phase, and that's okay. Just do the best you can with whatever tools you have. Next, you're going to pull down the volume of all of your tracks to give yourself plenty of headroom to work with while we're mixing. Then you're going to turn up the volume on your speakers or your headphones to return to a comfortable mixing volume to work on. And then last, you're going to group and color code all of your sounds in a visually logical manner, however your DAW allows you to. Here's your term list for Module 2. Download the term list PDF below this video and be sure you can define the following terms: DAW, phase, stemming, and 0 point. Great job completing this module. Now that our audio project is nice and organized, we can really enjoy the more creative parts of the mixing process that are coming up next. And in our next module, we'll start getting creative by getting into equalization. See you then. And that's basic audio for YouTube, how to set up a basic VoiceOver vocal processing chain inside of your video editing software to help improve the sound of your YouTube videos. No matter what video editing software you're using, you can achieve a similar sound by using similar types of audio tools set up in similar ways.